अपना घर बना सके। आखिर एक घर कैसे बनता है? मिट्टी से? पत्थर से? नहीं, मां हमेशा कहती थी घर घर वालों से बनता है। मेहनत से, मोहब्बत से, कुर्बानी से, लगन से और बड़ों की दुआओं से। मेरे साथ भी मेरे वालिदैन की दुआएं हैं और साथ ही रोशन अपना घर की खास सहूलतें। बैरून मुल्क पाकिस्तानी अब दुनिया भर में कहीं से भी अपने रोशन डिजिटल अकाउंट के जरिए पाकिस्तान में अपना घर खरीद या पुरकशिश रेट्स पर फाइनेंस करवा सकते हैं। अपनी पसंदीदा प्रॉपर्टी खुद सिलेक्ट करें या बैंकों के प्री अप्रूव्ड प्रोजेक्ट्स में से चुनें। और सबसे बढ़कर ये कि अपना लगाया हुआ सरमाया जब चाहें वापस ले जाएं। रोशन अपना घर से अब आप भी अपनों के लिए सूद से पाक फाइनेंसिंग।
Everyone, I'm Alina Ali, host of Voice of Australians. Our show name is Ikigai with Alina. Again, highlighting the concept of Ikigai. It's what's your reason for being, what's keeping you alive or keeping you motivated. Today, I have a very special guest who is into property investing, who is running a multi-million dollar business of property investing. CEO of Investor Partner Group, Mohsen Uzza. Hi, Mohsen, how are you?
Hi, Alina. I'm good, thank you. How are you today?
Good, good. I was reading about your journey, and it's amazing. You came here when you were 18 and you started your property investing by yourself. And then you started this company. Now, this company is established so much, and you are, I think, supporting, you are running 16 million property portfolio by yourself. Is that right?
Yes, so 16 million for myself, but overall the company is managing close to $50 million worth of property developments across Australia. So yes.
Wow, that's amazing. So, and for yourself as well, 16 million is a big number which everyone can just dream of. So, I would like to know your story, how you started, how you came here, about your childhood. How's everything? How was everything?
Sure. Look, it's not exciting, to be honest. The story is like of any other Pakistani who is out there working 3 jobs right now or on a student visa who is out there. So if I can say this out loud, that dreams do come true if you work hard enough, and that is basically the whole sort of motto that I always ran through my head. And so if I take you back into my childhood, we were 2 brothers, and dad was a hardworking breadwinner of the family. Mom was typically a stay-home housewife, and so you are in that cultural norms and cultural ties where every little bit of money counts. And so I don't come from a rich family. When I was quite young, I was definitely a bit nerd. Very curious though, very intrigued by how things worked around me. And so we used to have this thing or this saying in the group of nerds that, okay, we are nerd today, but we will definitely be rich filthy tomorrow. And so that was really the driving force, especially for kids coming out from Southeast Asia. Money is definitely a driving factor, the driving motivation for a lot of people. And so I was no different. The expectation was that value of education, and so you need to prove yourself. And so my parents were of those people where coming second was not really an option. So either you are the first or you are nothing, right? And so you come from that sort of strong family ties, cultural ties, and so the competitive nature was quite inbuilt and sewn into the soul when I was quite young, into my mix of things. And so that's how you grow. And so when you think about some of these things in hindsight, you believe that sense of independence is almost taken away, especially when you are back home, especially in the cultures that we are brought up, because one, you are financially dependent on the parents. 2, You don't, tend to get massive or good jobs back home anyway at the start of your career, or when you're young, when you're 17, 18, you're not making, 6, 10, $20,000 a month, right? And so cutting those ties was quite important. And so I got my clarity quite earlier in the piece when I was still at school, and I realized that um, I look at my parents, or I look at my extended family, and I can see that they are there to survive, whereas I am here to live. And I want to really excel, and I want to cut the ties and basically go in that completely different direction where parents and extended families have always been doing work, 9 to 5, 9 to 8, 9 to 10. And so how do you break your ties? And so one of the easiest way for me to move forward was basically to move to Australia. And so as soon as I finished my year 12 back home, I basically moved. And that was the year of 18. Because I was a nerd, I got a scholarship, I moved here. I was one of the lucky ones. And but this unshakable desire of us to be successful was something that was there. And so when you come to Australia, you are like any other international student, right? You're doing 2 jobs, 3 jobs, working petrol station at that time, working for a security concierge. And so saving money like hell, having no social life. I studied at La Trobe in Melbourne at that time. But there were key sort of turning points in my life. So data was one thing that I was always passionate about. And so I learned, forensic accounting when I was at uni. I did my MBA, I did my CPA. I was, studious all the way through, but implementing what you were learning was the key driver. And I was going through my earliest stages of life.
Wow, that's amazing. But once you came over here, I'm pretty sure life would not have been easy. You would have been faced with so many challenges over here as well, because I know I took the same journey as well. So,
Yeah.
what the challenges, and how you become Mohsen Riza that everyone knows about you, how you came this far?
Yeah. And so as a young person, if you ask any 21-year-old, they define success through material things, right? And so I was basically that, right? I wanted to buy a Subaru WRX at that time, and I saved like hell to buy that car. And I was about to pull the pin and buy that car when one of my early mentors in my life, who was a business owner of a petrol station, he said to me, Moss, what are you doing? Are you an idiot or what? Why are you spending $30,000 to buy a car? And this is going back 2007, 2008, right? So, and so he was the first one who basically guided me to say, hey, go out and buy a house. Investment in property is something that is always valued upon. And so I remember going out there buying my first property when I was, literally in my early 20s. And we bought, so me and my brother, because we were here together, we bought the first property together. Literally in 6 months' time, I ended up buying the second property under my own name. And the funny thing was that when I went out and told people that I bought a property for $290,000 at that time at 8% interest rate, people are like, "Oh, you're crazy. What's wrong with you? Properties always go down in Australia; they never go up. You should not be renting in Melbourne." And so you tend to hear the same sort of mentality that is back home, especially because that's what your network is, right? And so I had to literally break my ties to come out and rethink the whole investing world as to how this works. How do people really get to where they want to really be? How does property investment really works? And so it was a big journey. It wasn't an easy journey, of course. At that time there were times where you felt stuck. You have this gutted feeling of you're living hand to mouth because you have a property at that time, pay, where you have to pay mortgage at 8%. You're not getting a lot of it, rent, but you're holding on to that asset because that's the only asset that you have. And so the bills come in and the money go out, and you're walking down the street and you don't even have money to buy a coffee. And so you're paper rich because you can boast about you being a homeowner, but you're really cash poor. And so some of those mistakes, now that I rethink about them, of course I don't make those mistakes anymore. And that's was basically the startup of what Moss is today, or Moxin Reza is today.
Sure. Wow. And in these things that you were knowing about yourself, knowing about the world, knowing about property, what were the biggest mistake that you did? And let's say, how would you have done it differently? If you would have done something differently, or would you keep it that way?
Sure, sure. If you if you rewind back, and you would still hear some of these comments made out quite openly in the communities that this show is going out live in, is that, our community unfortunately is still stuck with, people buying off the plan properties, house and land packages, apartments, because that's what we've seen being sold back in our own country. And so naturally, our notion is that, oh, if it works there, it should definitely work here. Whereas the
Mm.
way to invest here is very different. The way the investing works here is very different. And so, breaking that cocoon and coming out of that was quite important to understand what true and real property investing is. And so, if I go back and rethink about some of the earlier mistakes, I potentially have five key things, that I always tend to resonate to myself. I would say pretty much every day. Okay. And so those five things are, naturally people think cash is king. I say it's not cash, it's cash flow, which is king. It's not cash. And so you need to create the cash flow, not the cash. Banks wants cash flow. And so you could be an owner of $1 million property, and you're living in it, but you're not truly rich because it's just the roof over your head. And so what you
Yes.
need to do is you need to have the consistent income coming to you while you're not working. Okay. And so that's the very important key thing when it comes to property investing. How do you generate that money coming to you? A lot of people think about negative gearing, and they think about debt, and they say debt is bad, and go towards negative gearing, etc. All of that, so they're very focused on saving taxes. I say to
Mm.
people that, or even to myself now, that not all debt is bad. It's just a matter of how do you manage your debts. Okay. So you buying a car is not bad. A brand new car is not bad if that car is being paid off by an asset, right?
Yes.
If you buy a car, of your own money without investing, then of course it's a bad investment, right? And so you need to think about breaking your ties of you transferring your effort to money. Don't make that trade. You should always transfer your own effort to an asset, which in turn should be invested into things that you really want or you really need. And so you see a lot of people around us where, we are on good wages, right? You meet a lot of people who are on amazing wages, but what they do is they make that money to go out and buy things that they really love. And I say to people, no, break that cycle. You need to invest first and use the money from the investment to buy things that you really love, because then that investment would continuously generate cash flow for you, and use debt to your advantage. Debt is a beautiful thing if you do it successfully, if you do it properly. It's an amazing tool to use.
Yes.
um, the third thing, which is quite important, that I always say to myself, is that people think about property as a passive investment. And I say to people, anyone that I speak to close to about 150 people a week, um, be it on my mentoring or coaching sessions, or my clients or people on a day-to-day basis. Property should be treated like any other business. And so every decision that you're going to make it in such a way that you're running it as a business. And that's only when you become successful. It's
Mm.
not, a lot of people treat buying a property as an event in their life. Okay. It's like, I'm going to do it once in my lifetime or twice in my lifetime. And so I'm going to make a big deal about it. That's how people treat property, right? Whereas I say to people, property is just another investment class. And so you need to treat it like a process. Ask the right questions, do your proper due diligence, make an evidence-based, data-driven decision, and you would get there. If you're going
Mm.
to treat it like an event, and then you would always fail, because that event is based on a lot of different factors that may or may not impact it, right? And so that's quite the key. um the last two things is, people say that the best time to invest in property is when everyone is investing, right? And so you hear people saying this all the time, that, oh, especially over the last sort of 3 years, right? Everyone was investing. And so there was a rush, there was a fear of missing out, or FOMO, where everyone wanted to get in, right? And so I say to people, the
Yes.
best time to actually invest in property is when the world is collapsing or the world is ending, because then
Yes.
would be the perfect opportunity. When everyone is scared, you are the one who's fearless. You're thinking about it fundamentally and buying the right stock or buying the right property. And
Mm.
so,
Yes.
if you condense all of this into a single sort of strategy, um, I always say to people, one thing that you take out of all of this is buy a property that can help you take multiple exit strategies. Okay. And so I'll give you a very quick example. A lot of people buy a property and they buy it to sell in the future. That's one exit strategy. Okay.
Mm.
And so a property can have multiple exit strategies. You can buy a property and renovate it and create income, more income. You can convert a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom to a 4-bedroom and create more income. You can do sub developments with that property, convert one house into 4 houses. And so buy the property that gives you the opportunity to take multiple exits depending on where you are in your life. And that property would do wonders for you. Okay. If your property goal is just buy and sell, and then there would be times where the banks would say no to you and you would be stuck. You would always be stuck. Okay.
Mm.
So yeah.
Thank you. Now you have managed a big portfolio, right? 16 million, it's not easy. Now, if you would have done the same thing in half of the time, what would you have done? And like what things you would have done the same, and what differences you would have done created for yourself for your property investing journey?
Sure. I personally feel that I would have been a lot further out depending on the amount of time that I've spent, like, to be honest, right? Because if you think about this, I've been in Australia for almost like 18 years now. And
Mm.
so I've been investing in Australia for almost 15 years now. And so having a $16 million portfolio in 15 years is not actually a big deal. It's quite achievable. It's quite ordinary when you think about some of these as to what other people have achieved. Of course, for people who haven't seen other people achieving it, they feel that, okay, this is massive, this is big. And so I always think about, okay, what would have I done differently when I was building my portfolio, or could I put my portfolio on steroids? And that's one of the key things that I teach a lot of the students that I mentor. Um, Having a side hustle, number one, or a business on the side, it does wonders to your property investment journey. Okay, a lot of people don't think about it. They're very sort of focused on a single point of income, and so
Mm.
having that, even the smallest amount of side income, even $10,000 a year, or $20,000 a year, that side ABN would do you wonders when it comes to property investing. And we wouldn't have time to go deep into this. We would probably talk a bit about more when I come back and talk a bit more about the property strategies. But one of the key strategies the banks look at is how many sources of income are you generating, and how are they coming in together, and where is the key dependence. And so it's very, very important for me to really kick this. If I would have done this differently, I would have basically started my side business way earlier in the piece, and I wouldn't have been dependent on my own core income, or I wouldn't have killed myself doing 4 jobs or 3 jobs at that time. And so that's one of the key things that I always think about. The other thing is um, properties with multiple exit strategies. So as I said, I started off um, with that sort of mindset that house and land packages are great, and you buy the land and you wait for the land to title. And so that's where I started as well. And so I wasted a lot of time there. And so if I knew from day dot that, well, this is not the way to move forward, um, you could have bought a property for $50,000 in 2007. Those properties now are worth close to about $800,000 to $900,000. And so you can see that I was buying a $300,000 property that didn't do much for me, versus I could have bought a $50,000 property at the same time that could have been $800,000 right now, right? So it's important to understand that the property market is massive. It's a very different market. I think a lot of people don't understand, especially from an Australian market's perspective, that Australians believe that property is a right for every human being right now, right? And so everyone who's out there, they deserve to own their first property or buy a first home. Or first home buyers are privileged buyers in Australian market. You look at the property market all around the world, be it UK, be it Dubai, be it Singapore, be it Hong Kong, mature markets. Property is a luxury. It's not a right. It's passed down through generations. You would get a property, through inheritance passed down to you. And so you can see Australia going down that path. You can see that in 20 years down the track, this is what's going to happen. There would be no first home buyers out there in the market, because the market would be so far reached from where you are versus where the price would be for the property. I'll give you a quick example. If you talk about 90s, the property price was 3 times the income. Right now, it's probably 8 to 9 times the income. And so if you talk about UK, it's probably 15 to 14 times your income. And so that's the difference that you cannot get to, by saving money, So you would miss out. A lot of people would miss out. And so I keep saying to at least my people from my fellow country that, this is the time. This next 10 years is where you would save a generation and create generational wealth for your people. If you
Yes.
try a bit more smart, if you are, not that risk averse, and if you think about it more logically and invest based on evidence based, you would see that the market is massive. People naturally think that, for 550,000, I can't buy anything right now. The cheapest property I've bought, like literally in the last 4 months, is about $220,000 on a 700 square meter lot. Okay. And so that property was generating $450 per week in rent. And so you need to understand that, you can do amazing for you knowing who to speak to, and how do you go about investing into property.
Okay, so the reason I'm surprised, because and for the viewers who are watching, it's like really impossible to get a property of around 700 meter square land, generating 450 income per month, sorry, per week, and getting it in under 300,000. So that's why I'm just shocked, and that's amazing. Wow. I'm also shocked and stunned. I wish I would be consulting you soon for my property investment journey as well. Uh, the last thing for the advice, what advice you would give to people?
Sure. Yeah. Um, don't follow the sales agents. Okay, that's the most important thing. Don't go into this hype of, okay, house and land packages. There is a lot of people talk about rental guarantees, and people fall into this trap of rental guarantees. Understand that rental guarantees are built into brand new prices. So it's you paying for your own guarantee when you're paying for a property. I'll give you a very quick example. So if you're buying a property, say 650, and if a person gives you a rental guarantee, they'll sell that property to you for 700,000. So that 50,000 is built into the price for the rental, for you to get the rental guarantee back. Okay, so understand the fundamentals of the property. Don't follow the herd. Don't A lot of the times what tends to happen is that when people start investing and they are trying to be a bit more aggressive, they start to deviate away from the fundamentals of buying the property. Okay, so understanding the area, understanding the core area, what is the demand, what is the supply, why should you be buying in these areas, they step away from it. What they start doing is there's these barbecue conversations where this one person who has 3 properties, and he starts acting like he's a property prophet. Okay, and so everyone starts following that person. Or you would see newspapers or media talking about hotspots. Okay, and so understand that if everyone is talking about it, you are too late to the party. Okay,
Yeah.
understand. So you're going to buy in an area where nothing is happening and no one knows about it right now. That's the whole idea of property investing, if you are buying it from a growth perspective. Okay, so that's important. That's quite the key. Stay away from single dependent economies. A lot of people tend to try catching up the yields in parts of Darwin or mining towns, etc. Stay away from them. It's way too risky. Stay away from investor occupied territories. Naturally, people think that if there's a lot of renters in a particular suburb, then you buying an investment property there is great, because your property would never be vacant. True, but you are competing against investors, and so the investors think alike, and so they act the same way as well. When the market goes down, everyone sells. When there is too much properties, everyone starts competing on rent. So you need to be in areas where there is no competition, which means that you want to be an owner-occupied area. The true growth in a particular suburb is driven by owner-occupier, because even in times like today where interest rates are rising, a suburb which is owner-occupier is still rising in prices. Okay, you go and check out some of the suburbs in, say, Vermont in Melbourne, okay, still rising. There's nothing wrong with it. Okay, Viewbank still rising. There's nothing happening there because there is no supply. So there are key school zones which are driving these growths. And so understand the basics, understand how would you go about strategizing and buying some of these properties. Last two things: invest early. So the earlier you get into the market, the more time you give your portfolio to grow. So understand this, that the properties in Australia from a data perspective doubles in prices every 12 to 15 years. Okay. And so if you're there in the market for 15 years, you can be the next main. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. Okay. It's quite easy. It's achievable. And so having that strategy in place is quite the key. And investing early and making the right choices is quite the key. Once you get the gist of it, once you have people helping you out and building a sustainable property portfolio, you would see how easy it is. I have a client who came to me about 1.5 years ago, and he said, Moss, look, I'm very scared of buying an investment property. It's a big liability. You have to pay the loans. What if the tenant doesn't come in, etc.? And so I just want to buy one investment property and that's it. This year he bought his fourth.
In
Okay.
1.5 years.
In one and a
Wow.
half year, and he's sitting close to about $450,000 worth of equity. He's already sitting on it, and so he realized how easy this is and how quickly he can do it. And by just growing his mindset that, okay, Melbourne is not the only place where you can invest. You can look at areas in Brisbane, areas in Queensland. You can look in Perth. There are pockets that are still doing amazingly well. And so it's just a matter of knowing where to invest is quite the key.
Wow, that's pretty good. And last thing, I'm not sure if you are aware, but it is a tradition of our show that every guest has to share their ikigai, which is their reason for being, their meaning of life, what keeps them motivated and keep them going. Because I can see that you are going and you are still going. There is nothing to stop you. So, what's your ikigai of your life?
Look, my why for the life is building a school. So a lot of this is for a school. I want to build a school for people who are gifted but do not have the right opportunities to grow. I've never shared this out in open. This is the first time I'm sharing this out in open. And so that's what drives me. A lot of what I do is because of that. It's not so much that it's money motivation, it's money driven. It's not that. It's just having that school in place that helps gifted kids to come in, not worry about the fees, not worry about anything, and just excel. Because a lot of people don't get opportunities. I was lucky that I got a scholarship, right? And so if I didn't get the scholarship, I'll probably be sitting in Pakistan right now. Or, I would be doing something else completely. And so one of the key things that I do is teach people to do what you really love. Okay, that's very, very important. And provide opportunities to people who are gifted, because there are people who are gifted but they don't get the right opportunities. And so one of my whys is basically to provide those opportunities to people.
Wow, that's pretty good. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank you.
for the thought-provoking session, because I'm also a property investor and I used to have some beliefs that you busted. So it's good that you gave me a reality check, and for everyone as well who think or about so much about property investing, the right time is to start now and start sooner. And thanks, Marks. And everyone can start from everywhere, as we have mentioned that there is a property which gives really good yield and which is available in less than 300,000 as well. So yes, thanks, Marks, for coming tonight, and thanks everyone. Thank you so much, and have a good night.
Thank you very much, guys. Adios.